What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another mystery tackle box tips and tricks video. I'm Matt from SBFishingTV, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Ned Rig. So the Ned Rig is pretty much as finesse as you can get. I don't fish anything smaller than a Ned Rig, but that being said, it does catch big fish and it also puts numbers in the boat. Today is actually a perfect example of that because we had a front come through last night. It rained, it was windy, and I think catching fish is going to be a little bit challenging today. So the Ned Rig would be probably one of my #1 baits that I'm going to be throwing around trying to get bites on. It's something that I would consider a little bit more finesse than even a drop shot or a shaky head, and it almost doesn't even make sense because it's such a tiny bait with such little action. It really is such a do-nothing presentation, but puts fish in the boat, and it's definitely made its way into my arsenal, and it's one of my favorite things to throw. So I've got a ton of different baits and presentations of the Ned Rig style right here that we're going to be throwing around today and taking a look at. So before we rig anything up, I want to show you some of the heads that I'll be using. This is a deadbolt from Hard Hat Jigs. It's just that mushroom shaped head, and this is a 1/10 ounce. Generally I'm going to be trying to throw the lightest weight possible when I'm Ned rigging, but if you have, you know, a little bit too much wind, you might need to upsize that to like the 6th or the 5th. Or if you're fishing really deep, then that's when I'll upsize that head as well. But otherwise, try to get away with the lightest weight that you can possibly throw. So besides the Hard Hat jigs, we also have another mushroom head jig from Heavy Metal Tungsten. Both of these are just finesse hooks. You're gonna rig that bait directly on it. Personally, if you can find these or another Ned head with a brush guard on it, that's personally my favorite Ned head to throw, because I fish in a lot of places with a ton of rock and wood, and I love dragging Ned rigs around, and I do find that that brush guard helps significantly from getting stuck. So another version of throwing the Ned Rig is something like this nano jig from 𝗨𝗀𝗄𝗃. This is a 1/8 ounce jig that I'm going to be throwing around on a spinning rod. I mean, this thing is tiny, super finesse, really light wire hook, and an 1/8 ounce. I don't throw any 1/8 ounce jigs around unless it's going to be something like this, a real finesse presentation that I'm going to be throwing around on a spinning rod. Besides that, we have the main event, and that's going to be your soft plastics that you're throwing on these Ned rigs. So we have the Googan Baits Rattle and Ned, and this thing's pretty innovative with the rattle in the tail. Haven't seen another bait with a rattle built in like that. I thought it was really cool that they did it, and I've actually caught quite a few fish on this Ned Rig setup. Besides that, we have the 𝗍𝗄 10,000 fish 𝗍𝗄𝗃 bug. And this one is a little bit different than your standard Ned worm because the end of it has a bunch of appendages coming off. It looks like a tiny little crawl or bait fish just bouncing along the bottom. And then you also have your more creature-styled Ned Rig baits like the Z-Man TRD hogs. Something like this I find works really well in rivers, somewhere you're going to find a ton of centipedes, craws, 𝗍𝗲𝗄𝗃, stuff like that, and you can just drag this thing along with the current, catch you a bunch of fish. So when I'm throwing Ned rigs, it's always on a spinning rod. I'm going really light line. I go braid to a fluorocarbon leader. So today I'm throwing 10-pound braid to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, and you can throw the Ned Rig on anywhere between 6 and 10. If you're fishing somewhere the cover's really heavy, that's when I'll lean towards that 10. And if you're fishing a more open body of water where you don't have a ton of rock or trees, that's when I'll downsize it to that like 6. So if any of you are wondering what leader knot I use, lately I've been tying the FG knot thanks to Lawson Lindsay. He taught me how to tie that thing up last time I was down in Florida, and I've been using it ever since, and it is ridiculously strong. I would highly recommend learning how to do it. Watch a couple videos. I'm not good enough at it to fully explain it, but I would highly suggest taking some time and trying to learn it. So when you're rigging up a Ned Rig, and you guys can see I'm starting here with the rattle and Ned, you want to make sure that it stays on super straight. So really take your time when you're threading the bait on the hook. Make sure it stays nice and straight on there. Try to run it directly down the center of the bait. And then once you reach that point where you want to get the hook out, I like to try to make it have that direct, like 90-degree turn coming out so it stands out straight. Pop it over the bait keeper there. There you go. You want that bait to be standing straight out off of the hook. It's a little bit easier to rig these up with the Googan plastic than say like the TRD or anything with the Elastec. It likes to bunch up and get caught on the barb or bait keeper, but it just takes practice and a little bit of time. And another tip for you guys is if you are using the 𝗨𝗀𝗃, you can use a little bit of super glue, put it on the head, and it'll keep it on the very top of that Ned Rig jig head. But there you go. It's a good looking setup. It's so minimal, very finesse. Perfect to throw in clean water, especially when that bite is tough. Now the beauty of fishing the Ned Rig is it's so freaking simple. I find that a lot of the times the fish are gonna eat this on that initial fall, but otherwise they're gonna eat it when it's just sitting there. So I like to cast this out. I like to fish it around trees. I like to fish it around rock or just even in open water. Always keep your eye on the line because, again, generally I find that fish are eating this Ned Rig on that initial fall, but once it hits the bottom, if you don't get bit there, just slowly start dragging it back. You really don't want to give a lot of action to this. That's the reason that we're throwing it in the first place, is because it's very finesse. Just the bait standing there on the bottom, standing up like that, and that added rattle in here with the rattle and Ned. I mean, it's just flowing with a little bit of wind on your line or the current or whatever it may be. The fish are gonna see that thing down there thinking it's a little minnow, or crawfish, or whatever, and they're gonna come up and eat it. One tip I can give you when you're fishing Ned Rigs or any finesse bait for that matter is just slow down. Stop trying to put too much action on the bait, just let the bait do its thing. You're gonna catch a lot more fish the longer you let this thing sit around. And you'll be surprised with how many times I've caught fish when I've had this bait out and I've been checking my phone or looking at the graph or talking to my buddy, and it's just been sitting there for 30 seconds or a minute. And then I go to reel it up and there's already a fish on it, or my line's 20 feet to the left. So again, when it comes to finesse fishing, I pretty much will always have a Ned Rig tied on, and I'll throw it year round. It's really good in the winter. Obviously, the fish are lethargic. They want really small baits. They want something moving really slow. So it's always a good option then. And then working into spring, I like throwing it in the backs of creeks when it's really shallow and clear and the fish just want something small. Or if I'm on a new lake and I'm just trying to get bit, I find that something small like the 𝗨𝗃𝗃𝗃 bug or the rattling Ned or the 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗀 TRD are such great options just to have ready, like on the spinning rod, rip it around in that shallow, clear water, especially when the bite is a little bit tougher. When the fish are in skinny water, it's easier to get bit on something small like this as opposed to a big jig or Texas rig. And also, good buddy Lawson catches a ton of saltwater fish on this thing too. So if any of you guys are saltwater anglers, don't write this thing off. I've seen him catch snook, trout, and jack on this little thing, so pretty sick. So when I'm fishing the Ned Rig, really not giving it too much action, making the cast out, hoping a fish hits it on the fall. If it doesn't, then I'm just dragging it back really slow, letting it sit around a bunch, dragging it over the rocks and wood. The other reason you want to fish with a lighter rod is because you can really feel the bait down there pulling over rocks, through grass, over wood, whatever it may be. And then you'll know the difference between a fish and cover, because it'll start pulling back, or you'll have a completely slack line because the fish is running at you. There we go. Really little guy. But he wanted the Ned. That is one thing I will say about this. It'll catch really small fish, but it'll also catch really big fish. I think the biggest fish I've ever caught on the Ned Rig, see buddy, was 6.5 pounds. Very cool. I'll be honest, I was fishing that pretty quick. I was just trying to move down this bank as fast as I could, and I'm making the cast out and kind of catching up to the line and slowly dragging it. And that fish had it and was just running left. Little. See ya. That's a couple fish on that rattling Ned. Let's try one of the other Ned Rig baits. So the 𝗨𝗃𝗃, like I was telling you guys earlier, super stretchy, very resilient, hard to rip, basically impossible to rip. That's why I was saying if you put a little bit of super glue, I don't have this one super glued, but you put a dab of it right there, keeps that bait locked in place. You're gonna be able to catch like 100 fish on this thing. There we go. They're getting bigger. just a little bit bigger. Switched up to the Z-Man TRD right there. A decent little fish, probably 12 inches. So, yeah. All right, just tied on the 𝗨𝗧𝗍𝗂𝗰𝘁𝘀 micro jig. It's an 1/8 ounce. This thing is freaking tiny. I put the TRD hogs on the back. Looks really good. I think it's gonna work. We're gonna find out. So the 3 fish that I've caught have been on the outside of small guts and creeks like this. Last time I was here, I was finding those fish pushed up into the backs of them. With this little front that we had come through, I think they really just pulled out a little bit. It's also early in the day. Water temp 60.3. So as the day goes on, I do think that they'll push back up in there. But that's a little spring tip for you. If you've been catching fish in an area and you have a front or it's early, just pull off that spot that you were catching them. Try a little bit deeper or towards the main lake a little bit. Micro jig, micro fish. Yeah. All right. Oh, he's wrapped, and it's a good one. Oh, stay pinned, baby. Come on. Oh, he's still on there. Oh man, he's wrapped around that log. We're gonna have to go in for him, unless he just came off. Oh no, he's still on. He's still on. He's still on. 8-pound freaking test. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Oh, there he is. Get in here. He looks so much bigger in the water. He's probably 1.75 pounds. Really fat. Pre-spawn. Beautiful fish. This is the second one that's been pretty decent that we've hooked on that Ned Rig. Alrighty. Oh no, coffee down. Later, buddy. Thanks for staying pinned. And right now is what I was talking about earlier, checking your line. Another tip for you guys, when you're fishing really light line, whether it's 6, 8, even 10-pound test, make sure you're checking that knot and your line, because if you get a small nick in it anywhere, it's very, very easy to break. All right, you guys, that's gonna be it. I hope you enjoyed this video on Ned Rig fishing. Make sure you check out some of these baits that I've shown you today. Make sure you get out on the lake, and if the bite is tough, tie this Ned Rig on. I promise you, you'll get bit. Again, fish it everywhere. Fish it deep, fish it shallow, clean water, dingy water. Anytime that bite is a little tough or you're fishing post-frontal conditions, get your Ned Rig on and start dragging that thing around. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on Mystery Tackle Box's YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.